Should countries prioritize free trade or protectionism to boost their economies? From a macroeconomic perspective, the prevailing consensus among economists leans towards prioritizing a strategic approach towards free trade as the more effective pathway for sustainable economic growth and development. Free trade fosters specialization based on comparative advantage, leading to enhanced global efficiency, increased productivity, and lower prices for consumers. Access to larger international markets fuels export-led growth, while competition from foreign firms incentivizes domestic innovation and efficiency improvements. Furthermore, free trade facilitates the diffusion of technology and attracts foreign direct investment, both crucial for long-term economic advancement. While protectionist measures might offer short-term benefits to specific domestic industries, they typically result in higher prices for consumers, inefficient resource allocation, reduced innovation, and the risk of retaliatory trade actions. These negative consequences tend to outweigh any temporary gains, hindering overall economic growth. A nuanced approach involves strategically pursuing free trade agreements while implementing complementary domestic policies to manage the transitional challenges and ensure that the benefits of trade are widely distributed. This includes investments in education, training, and social safety nets to support workers and industries adapting to increased international competition. How does globalization impact income inequality within nations? The impact of globalization on income inequality within nations is complex and multifaceted, with evidence suggesting both potential increases and decreases depending on various factors. Potential drivers of increased inequality. Skill-biased technological change. Globalization can accelerate the adoption of technologies that favor skilled labor, leading to higher wages for skilled workers and potentially displacing or stagnating wages for unskilled workers. Increased competition and wages stagnation. The integration of developing economies with large labor forces into the global market can increase competition for low-skilled jobs in developed countries, potentially putting downward pressure on wages. Rise of global value chains. Companies may relocate production to countries with lower labor costs, leading to job losses in some sectors of developed nations and concentrating higher-skilled, higher-paying jobs in others. Capital mobility. The increased mobility of capital can allow firms to seek out locations with lower taxes and regulations, potentially weakening the bargaining power of labor and contributing to a larger share of income going to capital owners. Potential drivers of decreased inequality. Increased trade in developing countries. For developing nations, globalization and increased trade can create new economic opportunities, raise wages for some segments of the population, and reduce poverty, potentially leading to decreased inequality. Technology diffusion. Globalization facilitates the spread of technology, which can eventually lead to increased productivity and wages across different skill levels in developing countries. Foreign direct investment. FDI can create jobs and introduce new skills and technologies, potentially benefiting a wider range of workers in host countries. The actual impact of globalization on income inequality within a nation depends on a country's specific characteristics, institutions, and policies. Factors such as the level of education, the flexibility of labor markets, and the strength of social safety nets can mediate the effects of globalization on income distribution. Can fair trade agreements benefit both developed and developing countries? Yes. Fair trade agreements have the potential to benefit both developed and developing countries, although the nature and magnitude of the benefits may differ. Fair trade aims to establish more equitable trading relationships, emphasizing fair prices, decent working conditions, and environmental sustainability. Benefits for developing countries. Improved prices. Fair trade often guarantees minimum prices for producers, providing them with a more stable and predictable income than conventional markets, which can be volatile. Empowerment of producers. Fair trade encourages the organization of small-scale farmers and artisans into cooperatives, strengthening their bargaining power and enabling them to have more control over their livelihoods. Better working conditions. Fair trade standards often include requirements for safe and healthy working environments, fair wages, and the prohibition of child and forced labor. Community development. A portion of the fair trade price, the fair trade premium, is often invested in community development projects such as education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Environmental sustainability. Fair trade promotes environmentally sustainable farming practices, protecting natural resources and the long-term viability of production. Access to developed markets. Fair trade networks can provide producers in developing countries with access to niche markets in developed countries that value ethical and sustainable products. Benefits for developed countries. Ethical consumption. Fair trade allows consumers in developed countries to purchase goods that align with their ethical values, supporting fair treatment of producers and sustainable practices. Higher quality products. Fair trade often emphasizes quality and craftsmanship, potentially leading to higher quality and more unique products for consumers in developed countries. Stronger brand image. Businesses in developed countries that engage in fair trade can enhance their brand image and appeal to a growing segment of ethically conscious consumers. Supply chain resilience. By fostering long-term stable relationships with producers, fair trade can contribute to more resilient and reliable supply chains. Contribution to global sustainability. Supporting fair trade contributes to broader goals of global sustainability, poverty reduction, and equitable development. Increased awareness. Fair trade initiatives can raise awareness among consumers in developed countries about the challenges faced by producers in developing countries and the importance of ethical trade. While fair trade represents a relatively small portion of overall global trade, its principles and practices can serve as a model for more equitable and sustainable international commerce, benefiting both developed and developing nations by fostering a more just and responsible global economy.